The Council Spire on Nexus was the center of the known galaxy, a monument to the serene, unshakable order of 127 ancient civilizations. For millennia, they had judged the young, the chaotic, the primitive. Today, a new species stands before them, summoned from a backwater world called Earth. They are deemed too volatile, too reckless, and unworthy of a place among the stars. But what if the primitives they came to mock held the keys to the universe in their hands? What if the quiet ambassador they planned to humiliate was about to make the entire galaxy obsolete? And what happens when the laughter finally stops? This is the story of the day the laughter died and a new power was born. Before we witness the dawn of a new age, take a moment to subscribe and join the expedition. Your support is the signal that lights our way through the dark. All right, the conclave is now in session. Let's begin the story. Ambassador Eris Thorn's ship was small, insultingly so, as it completed its docking sequence with the Council Spire Nexus, a structure so vast it generated its own weather patterns. The contrast was a statement in itself. It was the ship of a supplicant, a provincial governor coming to beg for favor from the heart of an empire. And that is exactly how the Galactic Council intended it. Waiting for him at the airlock was Prelate Kale of the Signon hierarchy, a tall, impossibly thin being whose silver robes seemed to flow like liquid mercury. His expression was one of bored, professional disdain. It was the look of a man tasked with escorting a vaguely interesting animal to a laboratory. "You are the human," Kale stated, his voice a series of soft, perfectly modulated chimes translated into Thorn's earpiece. It was not a question. "I am Ambassador Eris Thorn of the Terran Federation," Thorn replied, extending a hand. A human gesture, a gesture of trust. Kale stared at the outstretched hand for a long, uncomfortable moment before turning away. "Follow me." The Prime Conduit does not appreciate tardiness. The corridors of Nexus were designed to awe, to intimidate. They were vast, cathedral-like spaces, carved from materials that defied known physics. As they walked, Kale gestured lazily at a massive, floating sculpture of twisted light, a monument to the correction of the Rylan hegemony. They, too, were a young and ambitious species. The veiled threat was as clear as the crystal floor beneath Thorn's feet. He simply nodded, his face a mask of polite interest. Fascinating. Beings of 100 different biologies paused to stare as he passed. Crystalline entities, gaseous forms in containment suits, hulking silicon-based life forms. Whispers followed him, the universal translator in his ear catching fragments. "Is that it? So much flesh. I heard they still burn hydrocarbons for energy on their home world. Look at its primitive attire. No personal shield, no enviro field." "Prelate Kale," Thorn said, his voice even. "I was told this was a diplomatic meeting to open relations." Kale made a sound like wind chimes in a soft breeze, a Signon chuckle. "A common misunderstanding among new species. You have not been invited to a meeting. You have been summoned to a hearing. There is a significant difference." He stopped before a pair of immense golden doors. "The Council has concerns about your species' rapid and unregulated development. This hearing is a formality before they vote on the necessary corrective measures." The doors slid open with a silent, ominous grace. "Remember to bow to the Prime Conduit," Kale whispered, his voice laced with condescending amusement. "Speak only when spoken to, and try not to embarrass your species too much." The council chamber was a vast amphitheater, a universe of quiet, ancient power. Hundreds of seats rose in tiered rings around a central, floating platform, and in those seats sat the rulers of the galaxy. As Thorn walked to the center, a heavy, expectant silence fell. He could feel the weight of 1,000 alien eyes and 1,000 other sensory organs, all focused on him. He reached the platform and looked up at the highest tier, where the Prime Conduit sat, a being of metallic gold, its face a cascade of shifting geometric patterns, its eyes glowing like miniature stars. Thorn bowed deeply. "Greetings, Prime Conduit. I am Eris Thorn, and I am honored to stand before the Galactic Council." The Prime Conduit studied him for a long moment, its head tilting in a slow, analytical motion. "Ambassador Eris Thorn of Earth." Its voice was a chorus of 1,000 voices speaking as one, both soft and powerful enough to vibrate in Thorn's very bones. You stand before the oldest and most respected governing body in the known galaxy. You are here to listen. From the Cthar Imperium section, a hulking, reptilian figure leaned forward. Warlord Zorg, honored. What does a human know of honor? Your species still fights wars over patches of dirt and invisible lines on maps. High Savant Laraxis of the Lumini Collective, a being of pure, brilliant light, pulsed in agreement. Their technological trajectory is alarming. They split the atom before even curing their common plagues. They experiment with faster-than-light travel without a foundational understanding of its principles. They are reckless children playing with cosmic fire. The Prime Conduit raised a hand, and silence was restored. Ambassador Thorn, you may be wondering why you have been summoned today. I am curious, yes? Thorn said carefully. It is a courtesy, the Prime Conduit stated. A formality before we vote on the implementation of a full quarantine zone around your solar system. Thorn blinked. A quarantine? I don't understand. Of course you don't, Warlord Zorg growled. Allow me to explain, primitive. Your species is volatile. Unpredictable. You develop technologies faster than you develop the wisdom to use them. You are a potential threat to the stability we have maintained for 20,000 years. The quarantine is for your own protection as much as ours. You will be contained, studied, and perhaps, in a few millennia, you will be mature enough to join civilized society. A ripple of laughter echoed through the chamber. It was not a kind sound. It was the sound of ancient predators watching a new, interesting creature blunder into their territory. Tradition dictates, however, that all species are permitted to address the council before a decision is made. The Prime Conduit continued. We will reconvene after the midday recess. You may use that time to prepare your plea. As Prelate Kale led him from the chamber, the sound of amused, dismissive conversation followed them. That went as expected, Kale said, the chime-like amusement back in his voice. They've already made up their minds, Thorn stated, his voice flat. What did you expect? By galactic standards, your species has just crawled out of the primordial ooze, Kale replied. He led Thorn to a small, white, featureless room. You may wait here. The food synthesizer has been programmed with your primitive biology's requirements. Some advice, human, he added, pausing at the door. Accept their decision gracefully. It is a great honor that the council is taking an interest in you at all. Do not squander it with a pointless display of defiance. The door hissed shut. Thorn stood alone in the sterile silence. He walked to the single viewport, which looked out on the violet sky of Nexus. He felt no anger, no fear. Only a quiet, cold resolve. He activated a tiny, subdermal implant behind his ear, a quantum-entangled comms device that was 50 years beyond anything the Council possessed. Thorn to High Command, he whispered. We read you, Ambassador. A voice crackled back, that of Fleet Admiral Eva Rostova. Status. They're exactly as the profiles predicted, Thorn said. Arrogant, complacent, and completely blinded by tradition. They believe us to be primitive animals. They are about to vote on a full quarantine. And the demonstration? Rostova asked. The demonstration is a go, Thorn confirmed. They've given me a platform to speak after the recess. They think I'm going to beg. A low, dangerous chuckle came from the other end. Let them. The bigger the pride, the harder the fall. Good luck, Eris. Luck is not a factor, Admiral. Thorn replied, and cut the connection. The council thought they were here to judge him. They had no idea that he was here to judge them. When the council reconvened, the chamber was even more crowded than before. Word had spread. The primitive human was going to make a plea. It was a rare and amusing spectacle. Thorn was escorted back to the central platform. He could feel the smug, predatory energy in the room. The council recognizes Ambassador Eris Thorn of Earth, the Prime Conduit announced. You may now present your case against the Pro. Post-quarantine. Thorn stood tall, a small, solitary figure in a universe of giants. Thank you, Prime Conduit, he began, his voice calm and clear. However, I will not be addressing the quarantine directly. Instead, I would like to present a proposal from the Terran Federation to this esteemed council. A murmur of surprise, quickly followed by ripples of amusement, went through the chamber. A proposal? From the human? That is unusual, the Prime Conduit stated. But proceed. Earth proposes a collaborative deep space exploration initiative, Thorn said. targeting the uncharted regions of the Sagittarius arm. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then, the chamber erupted in uproarious, unrestrained laughter. Even the prime conduit's geometric face seemed to shift in a pattern of amusement. High Savant Laraxis of the Lumini floated forward, her form pulsing with condescending light. "Allow me to explain the humor. Human," she chimed. "What you suggest is akin to a child who has just learned to build a raft, offering to lead experienced mariners on a voyage across a global ocean." "The Sagittarius arm is unexplored for a reason," added another delegate. "It is a chaotic region, filled with gravitational anomalies and subspace distortions that our best ships cannot safely navigate." "Technology," Laraxis concluded with a dismissive wave of her radiant hand. "That is far, far beyond what your species possesses." "It is true," Thorn acknowledged, unfazed by the mockery. "That Earth's technology is younger than yours. But sometimes, fresh eyes can see what experienced ones have missed. We have developed a new approach to deep space scanning, one that could reveal safe pathways through these distortions." "And what approach is that?" Laraxis asked, playing along. "Do you navigate by instinct?" More laughter. "We navigate by data," Thorn replied. "Our scientists have found a way to detect and map the minute quantum fluctuations in subspace that indicate the presence of stable, naturally occurring dark energy streams." The laughter faltered. Laraxis stopped pulsing. "Impossible," she stated flatly. "Subspace quantum fluctuations are background noise. They are too minor, too chaotic to be isolated and detected at interstellar distances. The finest Lumini sensors, which are the pinnacle of detection technology, cannot do it." "That's what our scientists thought, too," Thorn said, a small, knowing smile on his face. "Until they did it." For the first time, a hint of uncertainty entered Laraxis's radiant form. "You are claiming that your primitive species has developed technology that can detect and map dark energy concentrations from light years away." "I am not claiming it," Thorn corrected gently. "I am proving it." He reached into his uniform jacket and pulled out a small, unimpressive device. It was a simple, dull gray cube, no larger than the palm of his hand. It had no lights, no visible controls, no markings. The laughter returned, louder this time. The human had produced a toy, a metal block. "This," Thorn said, holding it up, "is a quantum resonance imager, or QRI. It doesn't look like much, but as I said, appearances can be deceiving." He pressed an almost invisible seam on the side of the cube. The cube hummed to life. For a moment, nothing happened. A few delegates chuckled. Then, the air above the device shimmered. A three-dimensional hologram, breathtaking in its complexity and detail, bloomed into existence. The laughter died. Instantly. It was a star map of the sector around Nexus, but a map unlike any they had ever seen. Superimposed over the familiar stars was a celestial spiderweb of glowing, pulsing tendrils of light. A vast, intricate, and invisible circulatory system of the galaxy, laid bare for all to see. High Savant Laraxis floated down from her tier and approached the platform, her light flickering with a mixture of disbelief and utter, consuming wonder. This is impossible," she murmured, circling the display. "The resolution, the real-time data flow, this is beautiful. What you are seeing," Thorn explained calmly, "is a live map of the dark energy concentrations in this sector. The distortions you were so afraid of. How does this device work?" The prime conduit's voice boomed, its chorus of voices now laced with something new. "Oh, the principles are complex," Thorn said. "But in essence, your sensors try to detect dark energy directly, which is like trying to see black ink on a black page. Our approach is different. We don't look for the energy itself. We look for its effect on the quantum fabric of spacetime. The QRI detects and triangulates minute variations in quantum foam that indicate the presence and flow of these dark energy streams." And he paused. "It's a passive system. It requires less energy than lighting a small room." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices. "Greed, fear, scientific curiosity. And you have other applications for this principle?" Laraxis asked, her voice now stripped of all condescension. Thorn smiled. "The most promising is a new form of propulsion." He touched the cube again. The hologram changed, showing a ship design that was impossibly sleek and simple. It had no visible engines, no thrusters, no massive power cores. We call it the slipstream drive. It doesn't use brute force to punch a hole through space-time. It latches onto these dark energy streams. It allows a ship to be carried along the existing currents of the universe, like a leaf on a river. It is almost effortless. You would defy the Council? Warlord Zorg roared, seeing his species' military advantage evaporating before his eyes. You would keep this for yourselves? This technology is not a gift to be taken, Thorn replied, his voice hardening. It is a tool to be shared. With partners. He turned to face the entire chamber. I am not authorized to negotiate with the Council as a whole, he declared, his voice ringing with newfound authority. As you have already passed judgment on my species and found us wanting. However, I am authorized to open bilateral discussions. Earth will share the scientific principles behind this technology with any sovereign species that formally recognizes Terran sovereignty and publicly withdraws its support for the quarantine. The chamber exploded. He was bypassing the Council. He was turning them against each other, using their own greed and ambition as a weapon. You would fragment this Council? The Prime Conduit thundered. You already fragmented it, Thorn shot back, when you decided that some members were more equal than others. That ancient power gave you the right to cage the young. He looked at an invisible timer on his wrist. My ship departs in 1 standard hour. Any interested parties may transmit their intent to open dialogue to my vessel before then. Otherwise, we will assume you stand with the quarantine and with the past. He turned and walked toward the exit, leaving utter, complete chaos in his wake. Prelate Kale, who had been standing frozen at the side of the platform, rushed to catch up, his demeanor no longer that of a guard, but of a terrified aide. On Thorn's ship, the comms officer watched his console light up. Ambassador, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. We're receiving pings. Encrypted, hailing on a diplomatic channel. The Lyran Star Commonwealth. The Proxima Colonies. The Tidy Federation. Sir, 3 more just came in. They're requesting to open dialogue. Thorn strapped himself into his command chair as the ship prepared for departure. He looked out at the magnificent, ancient council spire. Let them talk, he said quietly. The future is leaving the station. 3 months later, the Galactic Council was in shambles. 7 of its most promising junior members had broken ranks. They had signed the Terran Accords, formally recognizing Earth's sovereignty in exchange for the keys to the universe. Their scientific output had increased by 500%. Their economies were booming. Their fleets were already being retrofitted with prototype slipstream drives. The old powers were being left behind. In a desperate, humiliating emergency session, the Council voted, not on quarantining humanity, but on formally inviting them to join the Council as a full member with a permanent, unassailable seat on the Science and Exploration Committee. The vote was nearly unanimous. Prelate Kale, promoted for his expertise on humans, was dispatched as the official envoy to Earth. He arrived not at a primitive planet, but at Daedalus Station, a bustling orbital city teeming with alien ships, far more advanced and vibrant than the cold, sterile halls of Nexus. He was there to formally deliver the Council's generous invitation. He was met not by Ambassador Thorn, but by a junior human diplomat, a young woman with sharp, intelligent eyes. We welcome you to the Terran Alliance space, Prelate, she said with a polite smile. Ambassador Thorn is currently off-world, overseeing the first joint Sagittarius expedition. I'm afraid he's quite busy. I have a formal invitation from the Council, Kale stammered, feeling a profound sense of dislocation. Of course, the woman replied, gesturing to a waiting area. The Council's application for partnership with the Terran-led Alliance will be considered in due course. If you'll please have a seat, there is a bit of a queue. Kale looked at the queue. He saw ambassadors from a dozen worlds, some of them ancient and powerful rivals, all waiting patiently for an audience with the primitives. He sat down, and he waited. He finally understood. The Council hadn't summoned a primitive to be judged. They had summoned the future, and it hadn't even bothered to ask for permission to arrive.